Hi, I'm Britton LaRue, and this is Moon to Moon. Moon to Moon is a space to consider, celebrate, and share the ways we come home to ourselves, anchor through change, and uncover our power. 1 month, one phase, one loving step at a time. Dear Moon to Moon, this is Britton, and I'm so excited to be sharing with you a conversation that I just completed with my longtime friend, Ashley Estabrook of Witches for Hope, which you may know from its previous name, Witches for Bernie. Witches for Hope has nearly 40,000 followers on Instagram and is a very lively, very fun, very engaged, very stimulating and informative and impactful space that weaves together spirituality, particularly the spirituality of witches, with the language of collective liberation and looking at the political field that we're dealing with in the present moment. And of course, right now, given that it's election year, it's a very lively time to be following Witches for Hope. So you'll learn more about Ashley through the conversation, and you'll be able to connect to Ashley through the links that are in the show notes. I do want to share, though, that Ashley is an affiliate for my fall class, Moon to Moon. Let me tell you a little bit about this before you dive in, because you may want to know this. So Moon to Moon is the current iteration of the lunar teachings that I first published in 2019 as Soft Strength, the summer of 2019. Back then I had a very small following, and it was really brave and gutsy of me to put this class out there, looking at the moon, inner child healing, intuition, the inner critic, working with timelines, past, present, future, through the lens of the moon, and how I could support people with hearing their inner voice and being able to identify whose voice is this that I'm hearing? Where is my authentic voice? Where is my true wise voice? And Ashley was one of the maybe 20 people or less who signed up for my first Soft Strength, which was completely asynchronous. So I didn't even know Ashley. Ashley signed up, she got the teachings, and for a while it was just I don't even know who the people are that took it. I hope they like it. It ended up that Ashley and I started to connect, especially through my enjoyment with the Instagram, which is for Bernie, that Ashley ended up putting out into the world after Soft Strength. And over the years, we've been in and out of close connection. Ashley was one of the first guests on Moon to Moon in 2021. Ashley was in the Magician's Table of 2022. And now with Witches for Hope, I've been very engaged. It's election year, and I recently booked her Roll of the Revolution reading, which she was doing across Leo season, and she's been doing it for years. And it just felt like the right time to experience it. And I really just so appreciate Ashley. I just really appreciate the human being walking around that is Ashley Estabrook. This conversation is so beautiful, and I can't wait to share it with you. So I decided to try out an affiliate program for Moon to Moon this year because I've never done affiliates before. I've been asked to be an affiliate. And basically what an affiliate, the deal with affiliates is that someone who knows you and trusts you and like loved the class that they took with you or like loves the work they've done with you can advertise you for you, and then they get money if anyone enrolls based on the link that they is attached to them. And that way it's like mutually loving, like we're all winning here. Like you love this class, you were probably going to help talk about it to your community anyway. Why not make it so that you can get paid when someone from your community who trusts you chooses to trust what you're saying has been really helpful and that you recommend. And so we're trying it out. So Ashley said yes immediately to my invitation to be an affiliate, and said yes to my invitation to come back on Moon to Moon, and then promptly signed up for Moon to Moon, which is super sweet because it's like she's coming back around to who I am now as a teacher of these lunar gifts, these lunar skills, these lunar invitations. And she's also honoring who she is now in present time, not the same person that she was in 2019 when she first received my teachings on this. So it's super, super darn cute. You're about to hear a really cute conversation of two people who really adore each other. And Ashley shares so much wisdom here. She just has this ability to speak profoundly in a way that it just feels like it just rolls out. And I always love listening to her speak, vocalize. So thank you, Ashley. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing yourself with Moon to Moon, the podcast. Again, and thank you for sharing your voice and talking about and raising awareness for this class, Moon to Moon, which begins the first week of September. Like the original Soft Strength, it's mostly asynchronous. We're going to have some live Q&As at the end of September, the end of October, and the end of November. But otherwise, it's asynchronous because, as Ashley said, you really just want to do this at your own pace and in your own way and over your own time, circling, cycling back to things as you want to. And so promo is closing on September 3rd, but the door will be open probably into mid-September in case you're just now listening to this podcast and you want in. You can still follow the links to join. There's no getting behind. But then, by probably third week of September, I will close it and I won't open this again for another year. So if you found this conversation because you follow Ashley and you've never heard of me, you haven't listened to Moon to Moon before, please be sure to use Ashley's affiliate link in the show notes. This is different than my regular link that you'll see, which is for Moon to Moon listeners who have been hearing about Moon to Moon already and who may already be in the class or are thinking about joining the class. So I want to make that distinction here in the intro before you listen. Thank you again, Ashley, and enjoy. Welcome back to Moon, Ashley.
Thank you for having me, Britton. I'm so happy to be here.
I really, really appreciate the return. It feels really special. You were one of the first guests that I had on Moon to Moon. So
that's what I was thinking. I went back and listened to it again last week for the first time in several years, and I think the episode number was somewhere in the 30s.
Yeah. Wow. What was it like to re-listen?
Honestly, it didn't even feel like my voice. It's really
Really?
sweet because the messages are so me, and it's very much a continuation, I think. The concepts that I talked about back then, they've only grown and grown. But when I first started the episode, it almost sounded like I was listening to any other podcast episode of yours, which was really special. It made me reflect on it's almost just like this essence that you bring in the folks that you interview. I think they're able to let their true selves really be seen and witnessed. And it was almost like a little message in a bottle, being able to witness myself from that time.
Oh,
Just
Ashley,
very
so
special what you do here.
sweet.
So I'm just so honored to be back.
Yeah. Wow. Creating another little time capsule.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Wow. Yeah. So let's think. Was that 2020 or 2020?
2021.
2021.
2021. I don't
And
remember which month, but it was definitely 2021.
yes. And do you remember how we connected, or what year it was that we connected? I feel like both of us were in the early stages of our putting our voices and our work out there.
Very much so. And I remembered in our podcast, we weren't quite certain. I knew I found you before I started my Witches for Bernie account. So it had to have been on my private Instagram. I actually went
Okay.
this morning and pulled up in my email. I joined your email list in May of 2019. It was right before the Scorpio full moon because the second email you sent out was about the Scorpio full moon. And what actually got me to sign up was a freebie that you'd created about reparenting yourself with the moon. So
Oh
I
my
thought that was so
gosh.
perfect. I was just drawn to you for the exact right reason. And then about a month after I signed up for your email list, you launched your first round of Soft Strength, which of course I signed up for and fell in love with. And I just thought it was such a perfect full circle moment when I realized that this morning.
That is so cool. So, was it by any chance an email about Poltergeist, the the one on the
The
Scorpio?
full moon, I think it might have been. I think so. I didn't sit down and reread all of it, but I think so. Oh, and it
Have
was
you ever
rich. It was
seen
back when
that?
the Poltergeist movie.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, I saw that very young. I saw that as a child in the 90s growing up. It was a little bit, it'd been out for however many years by then. But yes, very, very
Oh,
Scorpio.
yeah. Yeah, I always I watched it all the time as a kid. Like I could watch whatever I wanted. I watched all the Stephen King films and all the
Yes.
scary movies and that scene when the mom uh is held by like the tether and
Mm-hmm.
she's going to go through the portal
Yep, with
into
the
the other
TV.
side. Yeah,
Yes.
and she turns around, she's like, "Don't let go." I just
Oh.
I can feel it now. Like I just always tear up feeling into that mother in Poltergeist.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Just trying to defy all odds to
And I'm
protect your
going to go
child.
into this
Absolutely.
mystery because of the fierce love that I have. Yeah, and
Yes.
that's so wild given that you have this Pluto conjunct moon in Scorpio and you've
Mm-hmm.
been, I just love it. Oh my gosh, magic is real.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what struck me so much that, of course, it was the full moon that was on my, I mean, I don't know the degrees, but I know I was so newly into astrology that I was learning about my moon sign just a little bit then. So I think the significance of the Scorpio full moon corresponding at the same time that you were producing those offerings and things in my life were shaping up. So I was ready to address that type of work within myself. I think it was just all very kismet and very aligned. Very
Totally.
special to put that together this morning.
I love it. Thank you for going and checking. I love those.
You're welcome. Yes. I was curious. I was so curious. Last week, I actually listened to the podcast while I was away from my desk. So I wasn't able to pull up my email at the time, but I made a little mental note. I would have to figure out how I could. At first, I thought I might go back to my Instagram. And then I realized this morning I could look
Yes.
to my email. And I've got to say, I think I had something like 530 emails from you over the course of that many years, just because I've always signed up for different courses and things like that. So it just made me feel very
Oh,
connected to the work that you're doing, going back into that treasure trove.
my goodness. I mean, I probably had less than 100 subscribers to my newsletter at that time. I mean, I'd only
Oh,
had the newsletter for about 6 months. So
okay.
it's
Yep.
just so magical the way we find each other. And so then I think because that first Soft Strength didn't have any live at all, I didn't really
Right.
know the people that signed up. It was just like, here you go.
Yes, and I think that was the pace I needed at that time too. I loved how you just disseminated the information and then the way that you've really scaffolded it over time, being able to build it into more of a group, even more face-to-face offerings. I feel like that's just been really helpful for folks like me that have been doing this alongside you as you've been growing it.
Wow. And so then how did you start Witches for Bernie in later 2019?
That no, that was January 2020, right after New Year's. Yeah. I just had this thought one night before I was going to bed, and I had shared this on your podcast last time
Yes.
too. I think it was some folks like Jeff Henshaw and Cosmic Cousins that were starting to post more publicly online about being very spiritual and being into Bernie Sanders. And I went to bed one night and thought to myself, I need to find more witches for Bernie. And so the next morning I created the account and was very slow growing. And now I think I stayed stagnant, probably about 14,000 followers for a couple of years. And then ever since the campus sit-ins started happening earlier this year in about May, I started sharing coverage of that on my page. And my platform has just really, really grown since then, which has been incredible and a little overwhelming. But I think it just
Yes.
shows how many people are interested to know what's going on in the world. And I feel very aligned, even though my page and my platform has transitioned over the years. I feel like a lot of people that have flocked to me just really have the same values, and that makes it easy for me to keep coming back and showing up.
Oh, it's so cool watching you grow and just staying at it with your big heart committed,
Oh, thank
yo.
you. Yes, that's been a big part of it. I feel like that's been my Saturn work too, just showing up consistently and not giving up. I feel like it's been a really important way for me to prove to myself that through dedication and through actually, giving yourself some breaks too, but making sure that you show
Mhm.
up consistently, just like the moon. It's always easy to find things to come back to, whether it's just talking about the new and full moons or being able to bring up pieces that are happening in the news and in politics and tie it together. I think people are always going to be a little bit curious about that. I know I will.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like when you were in the Magician's Table in 2022,
2022.
you weren't Witches for Bernie at that time, I believe. When did
Yes,
you change your name to Witches for Hope?
I
I
was.
kind of
That
like lost track of when that happened.
That's okay, me too. I think it was either November or December of last year, sometime right around that time. And I was getting a lot of pressure from folks that had followed my page. I know that Bernie has gone through ebbs and flows of being on the side of history that everybody feels comfortable with versus things that he might have to do that are a little more politically minded for his station as a senator. So
Hmm.
I felt like the more I was able to help release and shed that identity tied to a specific politician, the better it was going to be for me in the long run. And I'd actually, remember I'd looked back through some of my older posts about probably the summer of 2020. I think I toyed with the idea of changing my name then because Bernie had already, he wasn't in the primaries anymore. We were waiting for the November 2020 election to occur. And I just felt this tug of war about whether or not I should switch to which is for progress or which is for revolution. And I think I posed it to the folks that followed me at the time. And I inquired if they thought that would be a move in the right direction or if they still really felt wholeheartedly behind the witches for Bernie, a lot of reinforcement to keep witches for Bernie. So I did. But then late last year, I was feeling like it was a good time to shed that identity. And I think it was really the star card and the idea of Pluto and Aquarius. I have a lot of these connections between what Bernie's messages were throughout 2015, 2016, and beyond, and what we're shifting into as a nation as we really fully go into Pluto and Aquarius. And I feel like this conversation is even very timely, knowing that on Sunday we're going to move back into that last little chapter of Pluto and Capricorn, which is where we'll be for
Yes.
the election, which is the last little bit of America's Pluto return. And to tie all that together, I felt like Pluto in Aquarius was going to be a great time period for Witches for Hope. And I thought hope was
Uh,
going to need to be the central focus that I really hone in on.
have you loved the name? Like, how have you felt about the shift?
I actually just recently got a request that somebody wants Witches for Hope on a sweatshirt.
Oh my gosh, yes!
Right? Right. So I'm
Merchandise!
especially with the seasons turning, and I think it feels perfect. I love that it's something that's being asked for. And when you ask how it feels with the name, it's a little hard on the tongue. Sometimes I even catch myself thinking Witches for Bernie. I still feel like that is so much of my identity because for about almost 4 years, it was a huge part of my life. But the more and more I open up to being Witches for Hope, the more it makes me feel hopeful. And I know you have my chart pulled up. I'll just reference, I feel like Witches for Hope is such a representation of my Aquarius placements, whereas maybe in the past, Witches for Bernie was very much me tapping into my Gemini side. Uh, I
Ooh,
think being a Gemini rising, I really, really bonded with Bernie over the idea of birds, first and foremost, which also tied into hope for him because one time he was at a 2016 rally and a bird flew on his podium and just sat with him while he was giving his speech. And after that, they created a bunch of merchandise that was tied to Bernie and the bird, and they called it a bird of hope. And in my mind, I see all of that as just really a good natural flow to be able to keep his memory alive, to be able to keep the things that were important to him that shaped my core values, in my mid 20s. And then now that I'm in my mid 30s, try to figure out what kind of foundation we can really build as a collective and a community that will make an impact moving forward. I think that a lot of Witches for Bernie with my Gemini felt very neighborhood, who can just be right here reaching my posts, just folks that I'm very bonded with and connected to on a more one-on-one basis. And then as I think more about Aquarius, I think more about the collective, how those individuals can go out and impact their communities and how it can be really more of a network and ripple effect rather than just a bunch of little one-on-one connections. So I'd
mm.
love to hear your thoughts on that,
Oh, I
especially
love it because
looking in my
your
chart
Mercury,
and the
your chart
transits.
ruler. Yeah. That is so
Yes. Yep.
beautiful. Yeah, that feels really right and true. And I can just see the merchandise, like the whole shop. Oh, you've had a shop. Well, you've had your apothecary, yes? You still do
I haven't
this?
reopened it. I haven't reopened it as Witches for Hope yet. I closed down my little Shopify earlier this year after I sold off some of my last inventory that I'd made that had the Witches for Hope label, or sorry, Witches for Bernie labels and branding on it. But yes, I did create a new ritual oil this last full moon in Aquarius, which is based on the star. So I've only made that one once. It was actually my very, very first beta test, and it uses apricot oil. It's very Venusian and bougainvillea. I think I
Mm.
made it during, I think it was Venus opposite Saturn. So the apricot oil and the bougainvillea just felt like a very nice nod to the transits that were happening during the full moon. And it smells amazing. I gotta say, it smells incredible. I haven't bottled it yet. I'm thinking about putting it out on just special select pre-orders. My hope is that
Mm.
I'll be able to get a shop back up and running with some merchandise as we're starting to clear away from this Mercury retrograde shadow period.
Yes, you've been busy. I
Mercury
mean,
station
h-
direct
how many
today.
was every
I'm getting very excited planning.
Oh, I just lost you for a second. Tell me what you were saying. Repeat what you just said about your shop and Mercury retrograde.
Oh, I'm hoping that since Mercury's stationed direct today, I'll be able to get my shop released as we move out of the shadow period.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Looking about the middle of September.
Mid-September.
Fingers crossed.
Okay. Yeah, I can completely see that. And I'm
Yes.
remembering how you shared a Pluto oil for my Scorpio offering a couple of years ago. I feel like that was.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think that was fall 2022, and that was so wonderful. That was such a great commission. And the oils that I make in the fall are very, very potent. I'll share. It was a little bit of a different recipe than my ancestor oil that I've made in the past, but I feel like those oils really are great for ancestral healing and for connecting with deeper wounds that are more generational. I find that there's a lot of really good healing in that.
Hmm. So what I'm curious about is like how many hours a day, or like how much goes toward Witches for Hope, including Instagram, readings, apothecary. I mean, what a commitment.
Well, thank you. And it's definitely been a lot of years in the making. I think that I probably spend, oh gosh. Well, so in Leo season, for example, I launched the Roll in the Revolution tarot readings. I
Yeah.
probably had a few 8-hour days where I would just sit down and hammer out different things like the template, figuring out the workflow for booking, taking different steps so I would have it prepared when readings would start rolling in and being able to get it turned around in a good amount of time. I think I give myself a lot of grace with my turnarounds. I do usually a 2 week response rate whenever I get emails that are booked and send them out. And in terms of a lot of the Instagram piece, I joke because if even if I didn't have this as a quote unquote business in any sense, I think I would still have my account and still be resharing all the same information that I do because I'm just an internet creature. I have been online since 1997 at my desktop that got set up by my grandma. And I think that even if I wasn't just quote unquote producing content in any way, I would still be searching the internet and coming across all this information. So some of that's just fun and social, and it's hard to quantify those hours. And in
Right.
terms of oils, when I sit down and make an oil, that's an all day affair. I'm going back and forth to the stove for 8 hours. And a lot of times when I'm planning the herbs in advance, that might be, maybe a hour or two period where I'm sitting down and going through what my collection or figuring out if there's anything else I need to source. But it's a nice little commitment. I have a part-time job and then I have a business that my husband and I run as well. So I'm kind of a busy lady, that's for sure.
Busy witch.
Yes, busy witch, busy witch. That could be its own brand.
That's right. Witches for Hope are also busy witches, busy bitches.
Busy witch.
I'm
And that's
I
that's a big part of why I'll do things seasonally too. I think that helps me keep my pace. If I were trying to do readings and oils and all at the same time, it would be a complete full-time affair.
Yeah. Yeah, because I really want to sit inside, like, what is it like to be doing this in an election year? And
Yes.
just feeling the energy of the community, feeling the collective energy. And then you just created all of these Roll in the Revolution readings across Leo season. I'd love to hear about that. And also, like for listeners who maybe haven't heard about it, like what is the Roll in the Revolution reading? How long have you been doing it? So feel free to just riff with that as long as you feel like.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, and in terms of the finger on the pulse for the community, I'll start there. I would say that probably 9 out of 10 people that are engaging with my work right now are just completely over electoral politics. They view it as kind of the means to the end that we're all going through right now. I think most of them would still love to have a progressive working class take over all the political seats like we originally dreamed of back in 2016 with Bernie's revolution. But I think they know it's virtually impossible unless we get money out of politics. So right now, it's really just about figuring out what each person can do in their own communities and their own personal basis with their skills and their passions. And these Roll in the Revolution readings, I first created them back in, I think that was 2021. And it was always around the Aquarius full moons or during Aquarius season. And I really like to tap into that energy to figure out what tarot cards will come out for each person, really trying to guide them. And a couple of times I've used their natal charts. I feel like those have been really great in-depth potent readings where I'm able to make certain connections between tarot cards that come up in their reading with certain placements in their chart, or perhaps transits that are about to come up in the next 6 to 12 months. And I find that most people, especially if they're looking for these readings, they're just feeling really overwhelmed. impact. They know that they want to make a change, they want to make a difference in people's lives or in the world, but they don't necessarily know where the best place is to center their attention. That's what I really try to do with these readings. And oftentimes I'll try to focus them a lot on the next 6 months so that maybe then they'll get another reading and be able to have kind of a mission for the 6 months after that. Now, this year for the rising sign based tarot readings, I really wanted to focus on the transits that are happening with Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, because they're making such big shifts over the next few years that I think are just really going to be tremendous impacts for the collective and the world that we live in. So that's kind of how they all tie in together. I think it's something where people want to feel like they have a direction to head in, and that's what I hope the readings offer. So they just don't feel hopeless.
Yes, I, as you know, received one of these, and
Yes, it was so special. Thank you.
but like the primary card that came through was King of Cups, which just felt very just supportive, as a sense of like, I sort of feel like that's what I am already doing, and it felt
Yes.
like such an affirmation, because sometimes I, like everyone, can feel like I'm not doing enough, like I'm supposed to be doing something different than I'm doing. Surely I'm fucking this up,
Right.
and the reading was able to really center me to just being just a single human in a body, with giving the way that you can.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. I don't think there's any one person, unless there's just going to be a billionaire that redistributes all their wealth in the most perfect avenue. I don't think any one person is going to be the superhero that comes to save the day. I think it's going to be about everyone kind of waking up to the power within themselves and deciding that they do want to come together, all together, to be able to make that impact.
Yeah, I
Very
really,
good. I'm glad it was affirming, because that really truly has always been one of the biggest pieces of this reading. A lot of times it is just about affirming that you're already on the right path and that you're doing enough.
yes. Yeah, I'm curious, between people's intake forms and feedback after getting the readings, if you would share any insights in terms of what you're seeing in terms of how this framing around, like, appreciating that you each have a role and you don't have to try to be everything for it,
Sure. I
uh,
had
you
one
noticed.
I had one in particular that really struck me. Works in a church that is in a very Zionist community, she shared with me. And so she was really struggling with how she can maintain her connections with these folks that are just a little antithetical to her beliefs right now. And so a lot of my guidance to her, specifically around that question, and with what came up for her reading, was around group work.
Mhm.
Trying to think of what groups she might be able to facilitate, small groups, whether it's providing some context for conversation, it's providing a little psychoeducation, help broaden people's perspectives, to try to shift their world.
Hold on, Ashley, I'm losing you now.
View. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, yes,
Are you able to hear me? Okay, good.
gotcha. You were speaking
Perfect.
to how the group work that.
Yes. And finding where you have access. I think in her case, it was very easy for her to have a community space where she could make a request to host a group. Some other folks might consider doing that in their community library to see if there might be a room that's available certain nights of the week. I think that once we just really kind of have to crack that nut of creativity open, and that's really what I hope these readings do too, is just inspire folks to get more creative with their resources and what they have access to.
Yes. I guess what comes up for me too is, given the climate that we have, say in Instagram, where there's often a fear that you're going to say something wrong, or that, people will leave you if you don't get all the language right, quote unquote. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, this is total shame language,
Yes.
This is what we're trying to liberate ourselves from. But holding such a large platform and speaking directly to the the political moment, the collective moment, how do you hold yourself through any like inner child fear that you're going to be quote unquote canceled, or that there'll be a revolution against you?
Right. Well, with my Pluto Scorpio and my moon Pluto Scorpio, it's very easy to have those fears. But no, I've actually over the years have watched enough people get quote unquote canceled on the internet that I'm of the belief that cancel culture doesn't exist. I think people face natural consequences for their behavior. And I know some people will lose out on revenue opportunities based off things that they say, and they may feel that they're canceled because of that. But more often than not, people end up just having that be a divisive line that shows you who truly supports you and who wasn't really in your corner to begin with. So sometimes if I might post something that a couple people aren't going to agree with, I have to remind myself that the block button is strong. And this does get to be my page and my world in a sense. As much as I'm sharing everything with everyone else, I'm still a human with boundaries. And if people want to come on my page and not be respectful, they don't have to stay there. And I actually have had my Instagram probably for 2, maybe even 3 years now, set where folks have to follow me in order to comment, because there would absolutely be times where I would post something that got a lot of attention and it would get shared in a different circle than I'm used to. And I'm not going to sit on my phone and police people's comments. And sometimes I will let people get into exchanges back and forth if they feel like they're giving a lot of information that they want to get out. But I might not always leave those comments up permanently, especially if I'm going to block somebody, because that ends up taking out the comment thread pretty quickly. And I think that I really try to foster a culture of communication where if somebody that I'm in a relationship with has a true problem with what I'm sharing, or if they think that my viewpoint could be adjusted or opened on a certain topic, I would want them to reach out to me directly about that. And I think that my DMs are always open. And if somebody wants to talk to me about a topic, then that's probably the appropriate avenue for it instead of the comment section on a post. So that's how I try to navigate that. And I think it's always going to be a little fear in the back of my mind. You never want to be wrong or be you know, on someone's shit list, so to speak. But also you
Yes.
just have to be brave. I think that's been a huge, huge, huge part of me using this platform at all. I think that, 5, 6 years ago, I would have been way too scared to say any of this on the internet. And now that I'm able to be here and just kind of be brave and put it out there, know that you have to take accountability and ownership for it. I think that's just a big part of how I've grown over the years.
Whoa. I know so many people listening are feeling anchored in all that you just shared. So you said 5, 6 years. So inviting you to share anything you want to share about like what has helped you hold this growth and be able to hold these boundaries and not collapse under the fear of disagreement.
Right, right. Well, a big part of that and why I named that timeline wise is because this fall I'm coming up on going 5 years no contact with my mom, most of my family of origin at this rate. And so I think that the person that I was back 27, pre Saturn return and right in the early starts of it, I was just scared. I was scared all the time. And a big part of releasing that fear was releasing having to check in and follow up and I guess be accountable to my mom. I think that she's so I'll share. She's a Libra. No offense to any other Libras, but she's a Libra that likes to gossip and she likes to look online. She's the type of person where when we would grow up, she would see that a house was for sale and she would drive by to see if she could look in through their windows. And just invasive stuff. She would look up background checks on people online. And I think the first year that I had Witches for Bernie, I was completely terrified every single day that she was going to find it and that she was going to email me or text me or reach out in some capacity. And I've had to let that fear slide. I've had to realize that even if that did happen, I have the capacity to handle it. and I have the capacity to not respond if I don't want to. And that's something where I know even back in 2020, if I would have shared things as freely as I did online and thought that my name would be attached to it anyway, that would have stricken fear right into my heart. And so that's just my tremendous, and I don't know, I think about Saturn with boundaries a lot, but I also just think about that like side of death. I've got Saturn in the 8th house. And so I view Saturn as time and patterns and death and all of these things that, especially in my work in hospice and palliative care, have really coalesced in my mind. And I think that it gives me the strength. It gives me the strength to know that no matter what I put out there, no matter how I show up, as long as I'm consistent and as long as I'm being true to myself, that's actually what's important. So much of that time that I was living in fear when I was still in a relationship with my mom, I just wasn't authentic. And that's really the biggest key. I wasn't able to be authentic. And I tie that in a lot with my Saturn journey and lessons as well.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. I know I'm not alone in this journey too. And that's why, none of my Witches for Bernie or Witches for Hope has been about that specifically. But every time I've sprinkled in those parts of myself, the community just, shows so much love and care. And I know other people have gone through the same experiences or going through it currently. And that's a big part of how my reparenting work and readings ended up getting introduced into my page too. I just don't think any of us are alone in any of it.
Yes. Yes. So then thinking back, you must have been in the very thick of your Saturn return when we connected.
Yes, I think so. Or you know what? I think I checked. When we first connected, yes, very much so. And then when we recorded the podcast in 2021, we were already in Saturn and Aquarius.
Yes.
That's what I looked into. But yes, when I found you, I was deep in my Saturn and return in Capricorn.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and what you're speaking to here around as long as you know that you're being true to yourself and speaking authentically, then you can feel good about it, even if not everyone agrees. And I think that so for many, it's getting to even that, right? Like getting to like, how do I even know I am speaking my truth? How do I even know I am being authentic? Can feel like misty and confusing.
Absolutely.
When you have the voice of that intense caregiver in your ear.
So I have a story to share about that. I remember in spring of 2022, when I was in your Magician's Table, you shared a book, The Speech of the Grail.
Yes.
Yes. So I had a trip that spring. My husband and I had in that fall received his mom's ashes. So that's a long story in and of itself, but basically his mom had passed almost a decade prior. He fell out of touch with his grandma. He took a road trip and ended up bringing home his mom's ashes. And our intent was to spread them in Colorado. So while in the mountains. And so while I was in the Magician's Table, I took the book with me, Speech of the Grail. We went up to this beautiful little house in the
Ashley, I've
and it was
lost you
absolutely
again.
gorgeous.
Oh, I lost you you went up
Are
to
you
this
here?
beautiful house. I hear you now.
Good. We went up to this beautiful house and were able to spread her ashes in animus forks. And while I was there, I started Speech of the Grail. And in the first chapter, they talk about a few different birds, and one of them is the magpie. Mm-hmm. I swear I've never seen a magpie in my life, didn't even know what they were. I was reading it on the back porch. I had this sudden urge to Google it. And what do you know? A magpie was right out there with us. It was incredible. The synchronicity was just amazing. And so I bring all this up to say, when you talk about how I felt secure enough to use my voice and to know my true self, I credit so much of that to that time period in the Magician's Table, because not only was it my first time connecting with folks on a weekly basis to share readings, talk about using your voice in a new way, but I read that book when we were in the sessions, and I found so much hope and comfort in it. I think that it connected so much to my Gemini parts of self. And I don't even know if there were specific takeaways that I would be able to cite specifically, but I remember that synchronicity with the magpie carried me through the rest of that year. I just felt like anytime I got a little hopeless or misguided and didn't know where I should be going, or if I should stop my witches for burning page or completely redirect it, I remember just coming back to that little synchronicity and thinking, you know what? That's just a nod from the universe that you're on the right path. So I got to thank you for that. I feel like it's not the first and it certainly won't be the last synchronicity that you've helped inspire in my life, but it was a really important one, that's for sure.
Oh, I love that so much. I just love that book and doing it annually. Yeah, and one of I think it's in the first chapter, what the character of Percival has to
Yes.
do is leave home, right?
Yes. Oh, and I felt there were so many synchronicities about the idea of leaving your family of origin. I loved that. That definitely helped keep me on the path. I think I was also going through so much turmoil. Do I reach back out? Do I reconnect? Do I take on the ownership of this? And instead, I was able to have the freedom to just keep down my own path. Very
Wow, and it
powerful stuff.
really, thank you. It really underlines the power of the inner child healing for forging a path for collective service. You know,
Yes.
sometimes we can feel like inner child stuff is like very self-focused and just solo, but it's like it's both, at the same time. The personal is the collective.
It is. I remember at one point I posted a little poll in my stories asking if the reparenting readings should be something that are done before Role in the Revolution readings. And part of it was about when I release them, but also should I almost require that? Should there be an order of operations? And a lot of folks responded really well to that idea. They thought, yes, you need to do the reparenting work before you're able to enact your role in the revolution. I've never ended up making that a mandate by any means, but I completely agree. I think you have to have that foundation of security and confidence that comes through reparenting and feeling secure in your life. I know that so many folks, they might have had more of the little t trauma that popped up through their childhood rather than a big T trauma event. Just those little things like maybe a parent nagging you or bringing you down instead of supporting you and helping you get that base self-esteem. And I feel like the reparenting work is something that everyone has the potential to do, no matter their relationship with their parents.
Hmm. Yeah, I was going to ask you how you define it or talk about it with your community, what inner child healing is.
Absolutely. So I really view it, especially lately, I do a lot of work with the developmental stages. One of my degrees is in lifespan and human development, and I have these two different books, Growing Up Again and Eastern Body, Western Mind, which both break down different developmental stages, like when you're an infant, when you're a toddler, when you're a child, teenager. And so I find that a lot of the different work that we have to do for ourselves involves nurture and structure, which is a concept that's brought up in Growing Up Again. And for folks that are just new to reparenting or inner child work, it's really about figuring out what your inner kiddo needed that wasn't being met. And that's a lot of how I frame it in my reparenting readings. I look at the moon, Saturn, and Chiron, and for
Mm.
specific placements, I share what those actually needed. And sometimes you may read a reading and think, oh, I got that. I'm fine there. But then you may look at a different placement and realize, oh, no, I didn't have the structure that my Saturn and Capricorn really needed. Or, oh, I never show up as a leader or with authority in my life. I wonder what it would look like. I wonder how happy my Saturn would be if I actually did that. And so I think that whenever you think about inner child healing in the broader sense, it can feel a little overwhelming. But when you break it down to specific developmental ages and think, okay, right now I'm just going to focus on healing my inner teenager, it can be a little more digestible.
Yes, so wild having teenagers, and one of mine has a Scorpio moon, as you do,
Oh, yes.
and just wondering like how like what is the future of their own inner child healing?
Right. Right. Well,
And how
and so I
much
did.
can I like even, control? Right? Like, obviously I try to attune to them as best I can. And in some ways, like they're also on their own soul contract with themselves, and having the
Yes.
mother that I am is part of their journey. And um, they are learning, hopefully over the years, to be their own mother, separate from me
Yes.
being their mother. It's fascinating.
No, and you're totally hitting the nail on the head there. I did pull up the information that I have for that stage. So this is from stage or ages 12 to 18. So the developmental tasks that they're really focusing on are centered around identity, sexuality, and separation. So they want to be focusing on taking more steps towards independence, achieving a clear emotional separation from family, emerging gradually as a separate, independent person with their own identity and values. They want to be competent and responsible for their own needs, feelings, and behaviors, and to integrate sexuality into the earlier developmental tasks.
Mm.
And so, one of the big pieces I've shared on Instagram over the last year are some of these affirmations for the different stages and for trying to heal wounds around that. So, would you be interested in hearing those?
Yes.
Okay. So, you can know who you are and learn and practice skills for independence. You can
Mm.
learn the difference between sex and nurturing and be responsible for your needs, feelings, and behaviors. You can develop your own interests, relationships, and causes. You can learn to use old skills in new ways. You can grow in your maturity and still be dependent at times. I look forward to knowing you as an adult. My,
Oh,
I love that one so much. And then one
I do
last one.
too.
My love is always with you. I trust you to ask for my support.
Mm.
And then, so the reparenting tasks, whether you're trying to heal your own teenage wounds or just parenting for your teenagers, you want to achieve a cleaner separation from and connection with family of origin. So, kind of letting those relationships evolve. They're not the same as when they were children. To
Yeah.
practice independence in a way that leads to interdependence. To emerge gradually as a separate person, independent of teenager with own identity and values, while accepting teens' values and challenging them when appropriate. So letting them grow, but also putting up those guardrails for them. To be
Yeah.
responsible for their own needs, feelings, and behaviors, and to integrate sexuality appropriately into the current adult situation. So I think that's especially for a lot of folks that have their own inner teen wounds, if they feel like they need to, rein themselves in, show up for themselves more consistently. I think a lot of us have gone through that inner teenage rebellion in our healing journey, where we kind of just want to cut the cord and say we don't care for a few minutes. And I think whenever we're reparenting that part of ourselves, we just let ourselves have fun, but then gently bring it back to home.
Hmm. So wise, so helpful. I need these books
Well, they're
as a mother,
excellent. I
but
have links. I have links to them. I have a bookshop link where it's an affiliate link, but I do have them available if you're interested. They're
I would
golden.
love, I would love. Yeah, I think for myself, I just really did not have like a psychic separation, like, or on a multi-body, like emotional body, multi-body separation that I could root into. And so you may resonate with this, like just so
Hmm.
much of my adulthood, everything had to be run through, if this information or is this idea, is this thing to do, going to be approved of, is it,
Yes, that internal filter.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I
Like I
think
don't
that's been
have
the freest.
permission. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. That's been the freest thing, to try to remove that filter. And I
Mhm.
think I think that's the inner critic voice that'll pop back up. And one of the most amazing things about coming so far and doing all this work is that you begin to recognize it when it pops back up again. And I think
Totally.
I think that's actually a really good way for me to identify that. It's when I feel like the filter has been placed back on. That's
Yeah.
powerful. Thank you for that, Brittany. Oh,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel like, here I've been teaching inner child healing as regard related to the moon and Saturn since 2019 when you joined Soft Strength. And like, I think at that time, I thought I was on my way to like graduating, some kind of like graduation phase
Yes.
where like I would, not deal with inner child things again.
Ding, it's done.
And now I'm humbled into knowing that like this is like a lifelong relationship.
Yes, it is. And that's one of the ways I've always framed it in my inner child readings is that your inner child isn't even just a child. You can theoretically do inner child work as recently as who you were last week. It's just all
Yes.
about how you're framing it. I think a lot of it ties into that past, present, future self work that I feel like you have introduced me to that idea as well. Maybe that was part of Soft Strength back in the day. I feel like a lot of ideas about your future self, maybe sending prayers or looking out for your present self, or you being in your present moment, the future self that's praying for and protecting your past self. I think that that's
No.
totally, totally, totally powerful magic for anyone to use at any point in time. You don't even have to frame it as reparenting or it's just inner self work at that stage.
Yes, I think that I was just talking about this the other day with my friend Natasha Levenger, who's in inner child healing,
Ah, yes.
about how like I think for some people there is a little bit of a resistance to in the name itself because it suggests like a certain window of time.
Mm-hmm.
When
Yes.
when I refer to like past, present, future, or younger self, future self, then it relieves this burden of it feeling like it's like locked into age 5 or age 8 or something like that. Because it really, like you're saying to me, is, even me earlier today.
Exactly. Yep, absolutely. And I think some people feel like it gets a little too therapy based if they think about going deep into their childhood, or maybe people feel really disconnected from their inner child. And so it's overwhelming to think about even trying to form a relationship with them. I
Yeah.
think there are a lot of reasons people would feel really resistant to it just based on the language. Absolutely.
Yes. Like that's also very true. And I have different parts of me, different ages that are even now years later like still slowly softening to being in relationship with me because like what they went through was so intense, and I like the larger me wasn't able to hold me at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and then I shamed them for over a decade and a half, 2 decades. And so repair can take a while, but there are other ages that are available and much more excited, I feel like, to play, and in forging those relationships they all begin to soften, it feels like to me.
Yes, absolutely. And I will just say a lot of times when I do inner child healing meditations, which I absolutely love Natasha's in the past. I know she's had some in Soft Strength and Moon to Moon. I think that she just does incredible work. I've definitely created this image where I have my old childhood bedroom, and sometimes my past self from different ages is in there, and sometimes multiple ages are in there. And I think you're absolutely right. You might be able to build a relationship with your 12-year-old self, and then your 12-year-old self is the one that's able to connect with your 4-year-old self.
Oh my God, I could
Yeah.
cry.
No, it's powerful work. It's just
So
incredible.
beautiful.
Because maybe that's the
Yeah.
voice they need, you know? Maybe that's the
Hmm.
one they need.
Oh, it's so good. I love I love when through this kind of timeline magic,
Yes.
the parts of me that I even most shamed end up offering me this, I'm feeling really weepy now, like just offering me something that is like the most wise, beautiful gift anyone could give me in this moment. And it's just the love that then blooms there is just, it's just the true magic.
Yes. It's making me think of just the compassion. It's those parts of
Mhm.
ourselves wanting to have been seen. And it's almost
Yeah.
like they're just appreciative that they're being brought up in the moment and they're finally getting their chance. That's how it's felt for me so many times.
Yeah.
Oh, chills.
You know, folks, uh, like I say regularly that the unshaming work I do it's just a different word for inner child healing.
Right. Well, it is. And breaking it down into the parts of self based on
Yes.
signs. I just think
Yes.
that's magic too. Oh, yes.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I wanted to thank you for enrolling in Moon to Moon again this year. I'm curious, like, what's behind your yes? Like, what
Yes, well,
bubbled
it's
up?
twofold. It's twofold. So it was so funny that you mentioned Natasha because when you shared that she was going to have some additional meditations, as soon as I realized it could be more new content from her, I jumped on that. And
Awesome.
I think especially with knowing that this the course curriculum has really just unfolded and evolved over the years, and knowing that the more distance I get from my relationship with my mom, the more I'm ready to address new layers of it. I think that all just coalesced into my big yes. I oftentimes will wonder if I'm at the capacity to do all of it in one fell swoop. And so I also just feel extremely resourced knowing that there are tools that are going to be available. And even if I don't keep up every week, there are going to be resources
Mhm.
that I'll be able to tap into when the time is right. And that's what I've always found about your work or any of the other teachers that I've invested in. The magic really comes to you at the right moment. You find so much medicine at the right time. I feel like that's almost part of the timeline magic too. You know,
Mm.
you get what you need in the
Yes.
moments. You really do.
Yes.
And sometimes you revisit the same work and it has a completely different layer of meaning because of what you've gone through since the last time you went through it. So
Mm.
I find a lot of good potency there. I'm very excited for what'll unfold.
Well, I'm grateful for your yes. It's a treasure.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for coming on. Tell me, like, what are you planning to do this fall? Like, do you have anything revving up? Is there like
Yes. So
an election plan or?
oh, well, I know. I feel like there needs to just be some good magic for all of us for protection and for the future as we lead into the election. I may end up, I've done some collective rituals in the past, so I very well may cook something up between now and November. And then as of right now for Virgo season, I have my reparenting books tentatively open. People can book readings. I'm not doing a full launch and going in depth like I did for my Role in the Revolution readings, but I did make them available because member of my community recently, someone that I've been mutuals with for many years, went through a tough breakup and she was interested in receiving some support. So when I opened those up, I figured I would make the link available if anyone else is needing that support during Virgo season to get some grounding. And
Oh,
then the merch, I'm hopeful that I'll be able to
yes.
have sweatshirts and then my oils get released in the middle of this month. So fingers crossed on that one.
Oh, so exciting. And we'll put links to everything in the show notes
Thank
so
you.
folks can go discover these goodies and follow you if they're not already. And
Excellent. Thank you.
yeah, is there anything else you want to share or name that you were hoping to?
Oh, I feel very full. I'll mention I am on Substack. So if you want to receive email updates from me, that's the best place to go. And then if you're interested in supporting my work and my page on an ongoing basis, you can sign up as a paid subscriber there as well. I have a small amount, and I'm always appreciative of those who just like to keep me encouraged to post online and do the work.
Well, thank you for it.
Oh,
Thank you for
thank
coming
you. Thank
on,
you.
Ashley.
Oh, I so appreciate you, Britton. Every time I chat with you, it's just a delight.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Wowza. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, thank you, thank you. What a gift. Listeners, inviting you to connect with Ashley through the links in the show notes. If you came here to Moon to hear this conversation because you love Ashley and you follow Ashley, I'm inviting you, if you're interested in Moon to be sure you use the affiliate link when you want to enroll. That way Ashley will be able to be given a gift for supporting the class. All right. Thank you. So grateful. Remember that Moon to Moon begins the first week of September. These are my core lunar teachings where I'm going to be guiding you in coming into that true voice, that authentic voice, which is what happens when you learn to hear your intuition and are able to identify which is the wise, loving voice amongst all of these other voices, that, and to help you know how to be more decisive, to help you feel more clear, to help you know that when you need to set a boundary, to give yourself permission to do the things that you want to do, that you don't need to wait around for anybody else's permission. Like, so much opens up in your creative life when the skills and the practices that are woven in this class can come into like that rooting that allows you to then go out into the world and participate, to contribute in ways that feel like less heavy and burdened by the past. It's really, this class is really about, on the one hand, being able to be like a multi-dimensional being who works skillfully with past, present, future selves. It is like a time jumper that way. And is someone who is just like deeply connected to the present, so that there's this softness and this spaciousness and this expansiveness that opens up, because it's not like we have to have it all planned in advance. It's not like we have to have it all figured out now. We have to like get our heads around it. We got to be prepared. All of those parts of us can relax and just respond to what is here from a place of self-trust in our own knowing. So if that sounds yummy to you, if that sounds delicious, it's an invitation that brings change. It's life-changing, these teachings, because you know yourself differently, so you respond as such differently. And this is the reason why we're afraid. This is the reason why we fear. We fear the very empowerment that these teachings can offer us, because we know it will mean change. So to come into, as Ashley was saying, to come into this class is a very brave thing. It is to say that you are willing to be someone who moves with mystery, moves with the unknown, moves with change, moves as a being who understands that there's no guarantees, and you have yourself. You take safety with you where you go. You take your okayness with you in any circumstance. And when you know you have that, then you can go out and do anything. Then all possibilities start to really feel like they're on the fucking table. So thank you, Ashley, for being an example of what I'm talking about when I'm promoting Moon to Moon here. And thank you for supporting me in that promotion, because I know it's a leap, and sometimes the kinds of things that this class offers us are almost like hard to put into language. Ashley's so articulate and so connected to the words that she speaks. It was just so pleasurable to be able to receive them myself. So I'm feeling complete. Thank you so much. Sending lots of love to everyone.